Okay.
I open the meeting again, back to open session for Tuesday, January 25th, 2022. Welcome back, everyone. The first order of business will be a water and sewer update. JB,
Yes.
welcome.
Good evening, everybody. Jonathan Beta, Director of Public Works. It's a pleasure to be here in front of you all this evening. I am here with Sheila Scazzi, our town engineer, who you've met, Peter Gordon, our water superintendent, who you've met, and then we have two new faces who you have not had the pleasure of meeting. Doug Pinard is our wastewater manager. Doug's been with us for about 10 months now. He comes from, a whole different type of background, municipal and the private sector. And then we have Kendra Martin, our water and sewer engineer, who used to be Sheila. And Kendra's been here for a while now. And Kendra comes from a very strong private background. So we've been asked to kind of do a 10,000 foot flyover of water and sewer. We're going to get into water first, and then sewer. And really what we're here to present and have a very informal discussion on is capital projects, where we are from a regulatory perspective, and then operations. And there's a ton of really good stuff going on, too much actually. So I'm gonna turn it over to Pete, Gordon, and Kendra. They're gonna run through the water, and then Doug will do the sewer with Kendra, and Sheila and I are happy to answer any questions and just kind of fill everybody in. This is great for the board as water and sewer commissioners, and it's also great for the public to really understand what we've been up to and where we want to go in the next couple of years. So with that, I'm gonna turn it over to Pete. Okay, thanks everybody.
Thanks, JB. And thanks everybody for giving us this opportunity to give you an update on what's happening in water and sewer. It's a little bit of a dangerous proposition giving me a format to talk about the water system in Plymouth, because I guess I am kind of passionate about it and I could talk all day about it, but stick with me, we'll get through this and I'll do it relatively quickly. When I sent the memo attached to this presentation to JB, I mentioned that the Plymouth water system is complex and dynamic. This is a nice, easy, compact way to describe the system, but it doesn't tell the whole story. And there isn't time to tell the whole story tonight, so we won't get into it. But some of the dynamics will come later. As far as the complexity, I just want to talk a little bit about that up front before we get into the presentation. So as a public water supplier, Plymouth pumps groundwater from 13 wells from 11 locations. We utilize 4 booster pump stations and 1 valve control station to distribute the water. We send that water through over 250 miles of water main from 2 to 20 inches to approximately 15,000 water accounts that serve about 43,000 people and businesses as well. We store about 8.5 million gallons of water, primarily for fire protection, in 10 water storage tanks in 6 separate pressure zones. Now, this represents a tremendous amount of infrastructure, and it's a lot to operate and maintain. And this presentation is designed to give you an overview of how we approach this task, both now and in the future. So let's get into it. So the regulatory portion of this presentation mostly refers to the oversight that we get from the Mass Department of Environmental Protection, and of course their federal counterpart, the Environmental Protection Agency, or the EPA. These are the primary governing bodies for all public water suppliers. They govern things like withdrawal permits. So Plymouth draws water from a sole source aquifer. You've probably heard of it. It's called the Plymouth Carver Aquifer. I've also heard it referred to as the Plymouth Carver Kingston Duxbury Aquifer, and so on and so forth. This aquifer has multiple recharge areas known as basins. The Darby Pond well that we operate and the Federal Furnace well are in what's known as the Buzzards Bay Basin. The balance of Plymouth wells are located in what's called the South Coastal Basin. The Department of Environmental Protection determines what a safe yield is from each basin, and then they issue their permits to the municipalities after they make those determinations. The withdrawal limits are conditional. They do give you the water, but you do need to meet certain benchmarks, such as projected growth, unaccounted for water, residential gallons per capita day, and so on and so forth. There's quite a few conditions that they put on your permit, and it can be tricky to follow all of them, but the permits are renewed every 20 years. In Plymouth, the South Coastal Basin permit was renewed in 2019. We're currently working through the process of renewing the Buzzards Bay Basin with the folks in DEP. I don't have an exact time frame for that finalized permit, but I think 60 days is probably a pretty good ballpark estimate for when we expect to see that permit finalized. So there's two other documents that kind of come up under regulatory. The town recently completed an update of the risk and resiliency assessment, as well as the emergency response plan. The risk and resiliency assessment, it requires us to take a very close look at our system and evaluate it for weaknesses. This may be vulnerability to things like weather or vandalism or maybe a terrorist attack. The emergency response plan is a larger document. It outlines protocols to follow under a wide variety of scenarios, such as an outbreak of waterborne illness, God forbid, or how to operate in a hurricane scenario or possibly a blizzard. It's essentially an instruction manual for running the system under both normal conditions and crisis situations. And while the ERP is updated annually to reflect personal or operational changes, both documents require updating and certification by the Environmental Protection Agency every 5th year. Both documents were updated and certified in 2021. So now we can talk about UCMR. The EPA and the DEP are constantly on the lookout for potential contaminants in the drinking water. And one method they use to identify these contaminants is a program called the Unregulated Contaminant Monitoring Rule, or UCMR. Every 3 years, the EPA produces a list of contaminants that may be present in drinking water. Public water systems that serve greater than 3,000 people are required to participate in the sampling and reporting on these contaminants. So the goal is to determine whether or not these contaminants are actually present in the drinking water, and if they are they in sufficient quantity to warrant the removal or the reduction of these contaminants. In 2022, Plymouth will participate in the 5th round of UCMR, and the contaminants they're going to be looking for are once again PFAS, and this time lithium. Now, in the previous round of unregulated contaminant monitoring that we did look for, I think it was 18 compounds that we tested for of PFAS. This next round, they're going to be looking for an additional 29 compounds of PFAS. I don't expect that there will be a tremendous difference in how we test out. We had virtually no PFAS in the first round, and I expect the results to be similar this time around. And so that brings us to rules and regulations. So rules and regulations are, this is a town thing. Obviously, it's not a state or a federal thing, but in 2018, the Water Division underwent the process of updating the rules and regulations document. For this purpose, we enlisted the services of Weston and Sampson, who were instrumental in compiling necessary information for this document. The previous document hadn't been updated since 1957, and it needed quite a few revisions to reflect a modern standard for the town and kind of bring us up to date. The new document was adopted by the Select Board, acting as water commissioners, in March of 2019. Although it is a complete document, it was put forward with the intent that any additions or modification would only need the approval of the board and wouldn't require us to completely rewrite the document. Work has already begun on updating that document, and we're going through the articles and making some changes and revisions. We hope to put that in front of the board sometime this year for a vote. The operational section of this outline will touch on just a few of the updates and the changes in the way that the Water Division functions. One of the ways we function is through the use of SCADA. SCADA stands for Supervisory Control and Data Acquisition. Some of you may have heard of SCADA before. The Water Division operates a SCADA program as well as the sewer department. This program allows us to monitor and control aspects of the water system, such as starting and stopping pumps, operating valves, adjusting pumping rates, setting tank levels, and so on. It also allows us to see data such as pH and chlorine residuals throughout the system. It allows us to monitor flows and pressures out in the system, and we get real-time data back on our SCADA system, like such as that. In the spring of 2021, we began a complete update of the SCADA system. The update, included replacing unsupported equipment such as PLCs, computer components, transmitters and receivers, and a lot of this was geared at improving cybersecurity. Now, all remote access to SCADA requires two-factor authentication at this point. If I want to log into SCADA at home, I need to first log into a VPN before I can even look at the SCADA system. So this is good stuff, and it means good things for the town in terms of keeping that system safe. So then we have the flushing plan. The Environmental Partners Group was retained to update the town's hydrant flushing plan. Hydrant flushing it's a function of water quality, and it's necessary for the health of the distribution system. The flushing plan currently utilized by the town was developed in 1993. Amory engineers put together that plan, and as I'm sure you can imagine, there's been quite a few changes to the distribution system since that time. A lot of new roads built, a lot of new cul-de-sacs, just a whole lot of changes. Environmental Partners, they maintain and routinely update a digital hydraulic model of Plymouth's water system. And they'll utilize this model to help develop a plan which will optimize our flushing efforts. And we expect to receive this plan in late winter or early spring of this year. So they're just about done with that, and we're looking forward to getting that plan. In 2019, the Water System Master Plan recommended we install emergency power in certain locations. Currently, all but one of Plymouth's pump stations have backup generators. All but one of Plymouth's booster stations have backup generators. The two locations currently without backup power are the Darby Well Pump Station and the Cedarville Booster Pump Station. The design phase for emergency power at Darby and Cedarville is nearly complete, and we'll expect construction to begin pretty soon. Emergency backup power in these locations will support the continuity of water supply during power outages, storms, things of that nature. None of Plymouth's water storage tanks have emergency backup power. The tanks use power to send radio signals. They use it to repeat other signals and report things like tank levels and temperatures and things of that nature. The reporting of the tank levels to the SCADA mainframe is what triggers the pumps to start and stop. The storage tanks where the levels tell the pumps to start and stop are what we call controlling tanks. So we've submitted a letter of interest to receive grant funding for emergency power at those controlling tanks, and we intend to pursue this grant funding also in 2022. Now, I don't think infrastructure requires much of an explanation, but here are some of the ways we're improving and replacing it here in town. A contract was awarded to a construction company called Dig-It in late November of 2021. This contract was for the replacement of the water mains on Doten Road and Winter Street. Doten Road suffered from frequent service interruptions due to the failing cast iron water main that was installed 90 years ago. The Winter Street main was recently discovered to be composed of material produced here in Plymouth over 100 years ago. This material is known as jacketed water main and is well beyond its useful life. If you've ever heard of jacketed water main, you probably know of the issues that we've had associated with it. Construction on Doten Road was completed in mid-December, and we're pretty happy with the work we got out of the Dig-It construction company out there, but Winter Street is going to have to wait until the spring because it may require a bypass main, which has to be protected from freezing. This isn't something you can do in the winter. If you've been up Stafford Street recently, you might have seen this tank looking this way. The Stafford Street water storage tank is a 1.5 million gallon welded steel tank. The rehabilitation of this tank started last September. It was about mid-September. It's been plagued by issues since it began. Delays in materials, weather-related issues, a couple of those windy storms we had, COVID-related setbacks, you name it. They pushed the completion date of this project back. We hope to have the tank filled and back in service sometime in early February. However, the cold weather prohibits the curing of the exterior coating, and the painting company is going to need to return in the spring to complete the project. The next tank scheduled for rehabilitation is the South Pine Hills tank. This is a concrete tank, so the process of rehabilitation is somewhat different, but this should take place somewhere around FY24 or FY25. Now, as far as pump station upgrades go, a phased approach to upgrading the pumping stations was another recommendation that came out of the 2019 master plan. The planning and design stages for South Pond Wells and North Plymouth Wells is complete, and construction should begin in mid to late February 2022. The upgrades will include valving, new flow meters, upgraded chemical feed pumps, analyzers for pH, chlorine, you name it. Painting and sealing will happen in the buildings. Just general upgrading to these facilities. We hope to continue upgrades to Darby Pond Well, Ellisville Well, and the Pine Hills Booster Station later in 2022 or early in 2023. So we're really trying to, bring our pump stations up to speed and make them more functional and more efficient. That's the whole idea behind these upgrades. So there are two somewhat large water main projects on the horizon. One of them is the Federal Furnace and Hilldale Water Main Project. So again, you've heard me talk about this, but the 2019 Water System Master Plan was developed by environmental partners, and it's been the driver for the majority of our capital improvement requests. The plan has recommended a phased approach to replacing our asbestos cement water mains. And there's quite a few of them in our distribution system. So this is going to take a while to do, so you got to start somewhere. The Water Division has submitted a capital request for about $5.2 million to replace the mains on Hilldale and Federal Furnace Road. The water mains on Hilldale and Federal Furnace are comprised of asbestos cement main. This stuff can become pretty brittle when it's saturated, and it can break pretty easily. A lot of it is vinyl lined. The vinyl lined asbestos cement can cause water quality concerns, which require bleeders. The bleeders actually let water out of the main so it doesn't sit there too long, and this is called reducing the water age in the pipe. There's two bleeders on Federal Furnace that collectively discharge slightly over 2 million gallons of water each year. And by replacing this main, we kind of hope to not throw that 2 million gallons of water away. Replacement of this pipe would also reduce leaks on the town side of the pipes. It would support improved water quality, prevent future risks of failure to the asbestos main, and do a lot of good things in terms of getting this out of our system and getting a better, newer pipe in. The other water main project is the Manomet Pressure Zone pipe replacement project. After securing some EDA grant funding and appropriating some additional funds at the spring annual town meeting of 2020, the town underwent the selection process for a consulting firm to engineer the Manomet Pressure Zone pipe upgrade project. There currently exists certain hydraulic deficiencies within the Manomet Pressure Zone relating to pressures and flows. There are flow restrictions from older or undersized water mains within the zone that will experience high pressures during pumping cycles that fill the South Pine Hills tank. These flow restrictions can also create lower pressures in parts of the zone where the water is being drawn out of. The flow restrictions limit the amount of water available for firefighting in portions of Manomet, and they also cause the pump stations to use far more energy than they should to kind of force water into that tank. The solution to these problems is to upsize the water mains on portions of Bartlett Road, Brook Road, Manomet Point Road, Whitehorse Road, and Rocky Hill Road. Upsizing these pipes will lead to more equalized pressure throughout the zones, no high or low pressure spikes. It will lead to shorter run times with the wells, which will actually equate to more increased capacity within that zone in terms of how much water is available to us. This is a pretty sizable project, and while it's still in the design phase, it does have a projected start date of August 27th, 2022. And we're looking forward to the start of that project. So moving on to new source exploration. Again, Plymouth operates 13 wells on 11 sites. We institute seasonal outdoor watering restrictions as a condition of our Water Management Act withdrawal permit. And we always seek to promote conservation as with the creation of the Water Conservation Committee. As a municipality, we're reasonably well supplied with water at this point. However, we do not have the surplus capacity to sustain the continued growth that we've seen over the last 10 years or so. Even if growth were to slow significantly, our abilities to supply water would require augmentation. As the wells that we currently operate age, they suffer from reduction in yield and water quality. Wells can only be redeveloped so many times before they lose, they suffer from diminished capacity. As a public water supplier, we do have the responsibility to the ratepayers to assure that water will come out of the tap when it's open. And to that end, it's prudent to identify new sources and develop them well in advance of the actual need. The siting, construction, and permitting of a new source can take up to 10 years. So now is the time to identify a new source. We have contracted the services of the Horsley Witten Group, including a very knowledgeable local hydrogeologist to help identify potential sources. Their tasks include things like GIS site screening, groundwater modeling, desktop analysis, and of course, field exploration, where we actually go out and put holes in the ground and find out how much water we can get out of it. There's a lot of challenges involved in siting a new source, and they include the ability to control the area around the well, the zone 1s and the zone 2s. Obviously, the proximity to the distribution system is a big concern as well. And we're hoping to probably request funding for a new well somewhere just after FY27. I think we'll be looking to do that. And finally, we'll just talk for a second about the Water Conservation Committee. In the fall of 2020, the Select Board voted for the creation of a committee to explore ways to conserve water, promote the responsible use of the resource, and protect the sole source aquifer where we draw all our drinking water from. The first meeting of the Water Conservation Committee happened in early November of 2020, and the committee's been since working very diligently to create policies and practices. The committee hopes to publish their findings in a document called the Town of Plymouth Water Conservation Plan. If the plan's successful, it will be a roadmap to reducing water production and consumption by as much as 15%, which is pretty significant over the next decade. The DPW Water Division has been working closely with the committee to devise strategies. The committee has seen success in creating awareness, investigating and implementing conservation programs, and exploring public outreach. Access to consumption data has been somewhat of a barrier to the research necessary for the creation of a meaningful conservation plan. The committee and the Water Division, as well as the DPW, continue to look for ways to quantify seasonal usage and maximize the conservation efforts. And I applaud their efforts and look forward to continually working with them in the future. And that's about what's going on in water. I'd be happy to answer any questions if they exist.
Any questions for Peter? Mr. Gordon?
If you think of something later, I'm available anytime.
Well, I have a couple, not so fast. I was listening to you, and the next well is 2027, if I understood it right. Do you have like a master plan in place or something so-called as we grow? You know, you have different sites up for water, and if you do, with places like the planning board, maybe the zoning board of appeals, even have these sections of town that are seriously seeing growth, like Red Brook, for instance, and stuff like that. I mean,
so I mean, you know, Red Brook being separate, I don't think we're going to put in a well anywhere near Red Brook because it's just so far from the municipal distribution system that it wouldn't make a ton of sense. The master plan did recommend that we continue looking for a new source, and while I said that we would probably approach town meeting in FY27 for funding, I think that's reasonably accurate. But even if we were to you know, secure the funding in FY27, it would probably still be another 1.5 to 2 years or more before that well actually went into production. So I think the timeline is accurate. I hope that, you know, Horsley and Witten can help us cite a new source that's in the appropriate pressure zone or in reasonable proximity to the distribution system, so that it doesn't include the installation of the thousands of feet or, God forbid, miles of water main to connect it. But I hope that gets close to an approximation of an answer there, Davey.
yeah, it is. It wasn't so much the Red Brook question, but areas of new development, say. I mean, is it parcels of land? I don't mean put the shovel in the ground and stop, but like, say, for instance, Old Tech has 1,500, 1,200 acres over there. Is it X amount of acres that the town's interested in for a well in the future, a possibility? I think having a list, something like that, to keep on file with everybody, so we know as these projects come up, oh, wait a minute, you know, this could be a well site in the future, or this is, you know, something like that. That's really what the question was, not.
Can I jump in on that one, everybody?
Sure.
I'd like to jump in on that. So again, Pete mentioned during his presentation, we have Horsley and Witten working on a new source exploration. We've been working with Neil Price of Horsley and Witten for well over a year. I do expect that we will be in front of this board again, you know, relatively soon, probably, I don't know, hopefully within 6 months, 6 to 9 months. And what we have been doing is we've been looking at a prior in terms of preference of town-owned land close to the system, and then private land, you know, with, you know, clean, you know, clean sites, preferably, not impacting other existing zone twos, that are in that other wells that are influenced by those zone twos. So we're aware of that. We have also, I know, Sheila works with DMEA. I know, open space, all of those groups, we have these kind of blips on our radar, and we do plan on getting back in front of the board very soon. But I do want to say, as part of this presentation, everybody, because we are concerned with development, we've been dealing with a whole influx of major projects over the past couple of years, especially in West Plymouth. Our two biggest pieces of the puzzle were really the Darby restriction and the Manamet pipe upgrades. Both of those have come to fruition over the past, real quickly, the past year, if you would. Once that Manamet pipe project is complete, we're really looking to analyze and see firsthand what the changes are with West Plymouth in terms of that pressure zone, because we're not sure how the water is actually going to move. We have presented information to this board in terms of maybe a valve station, working with Holtec on that off of Rocky Hill. That's a priority. But our goal is to basically really sustain the needs of the water system for the next, really lock it up for the next 10 to 20 years. So that's our goal. But I do think we'll be back in front of the board relatively soon with an update in terms of those well locations. And as Pete mentioned, you're looking at not having something online until 2027. It takes years. If you look at what happened with Forges Field, that took us a good solid 5 to 6 years for a 1 million gallon supply. We're looking for something along those lines.
Okay. Charlie?
Yeah, going back to what Dickie said, JB, I learned something last week from Sheila about the conservation land. And, we got a lot of land that we want to develop into open space, but we have to be careful not to designate some of this well land where you can have good wells and make them conservation because we can't dig a well there. So that's something that, after learning that from Sheila, she talked about you can't put a cemetery, you can't put any digging in once it's designated conservation. So I think we have to identify parcels of land that are good well sites and make sure they don't get restricted like that.
Right.
So that's something Sheila Scazzi brought it up in the meeting, and it really we got to be careful of that. So
yeah, we've been running into that as a roadblock for a while now, where the town has done a great job in terms of acquiring open space, but a lot of their open space has conservation restrictions on it, so we can't utilize them for water supplies.
It's important, but what's more important, sometimes we got to look at water is so important to us. So
agreed, but we've had conversations, with Bill and David and Kim and all the powers that be that are acquiring this open space, knowing firsthand that we need another water supply. So they've been excellent in terms of working with us in terms of not putting those CRs on those properties. So I think the lines of communication have been really well, opened up, if you would. So I think everybody knows the goal of DPW in terms of acquiring land for a water supply, Charlie.
But I want to say I appreciate being proactive,
Absolutely.
Looking down the road so we don't have another disaster like we had, the $48 million disaster. Also, Manamet, getting that done, that's very important. We all know what could have happened and could happen. And now we got your project coming up on the waterfront that we know what could happen if that bursts. So, good work. And it was a great presentation. I appreciate it.
Yeah, and just real quick, Charlie, just to kind of summarize that, and I don't know if Pete was here, but Sheila and I was, in 2016, we went through we had to go issue a water declaration of emergency. We had the Secretary of Environmental Affairs here because we went through a major drought. And that's really what opened up our eyes in terms of what the town needed to do, Charlie, and proactive.
You opened my eyes up when you told me about it. You opened my eyes up.
We've been proactive ever since because we will never go through that. We don't want to go through that again. I feel terrible for any municipality that has to go through that process.
Town doesn't even, a lot of people in town don't even know how bad it was. So
that's correct.
Which would have set off a panic, I think, but good for you. So good job, your whole group. So
Thank you. All right, so if everybody's all set on the water side, I'm going to introduce Doug Bernard, your wastewater manager. He's going to run through the same type of presentation on the sewer side of things. So thank you.
Hi, everybody. I'm Doug Bernard. Like JB said, I've been here about 10 months. I'm the sewer manager. I'm just going to kind of give you a rundown on some of the projects that we got going on. Pete, awesome job. Did a great job. Tough act to follow there, Pete. So some of the projects that we have a few regulatory things and some operations and some infrastructure. Some of the regulatory things that we have, we're working with Horsley Witten on a groundwater discharge. We got a couple other regulatory things with sewer regs and fog regs. We got a CMOM. So those are a few of our regulatory things that we're going to be talking about. And then on the operations side, it's just like the water, we have SCADA and for monitoring. And then something that we'll be working with our current operators with is a piece of equipment called Greasilla, which we'll get into. Some of the infrastructure stuff, which I'm sure a lot of you are aware of, is the Water Street Interceptor, the flood barrier around the Water Street Pump Station. We have a Camelot Drive sewer extension, and then also we're working out at the Plymouth Airport on the treatment plant that's out there. So to get started with the groundwater discharge, like I said, we're working with Horsley Witten. The treatment plant right now, we treat an average of 1.5 million gallons a day. We're permitted to discharge out to the bay 1.75 million gallons a day. Out the outfall down near Water Street. And so what this is doing now is we're looking into permitting going groundwater discharge and what that impact would be if we had to do that on a more permanent basis. So we have monitoring wells that are out there, and we sample those quarterly, and we'll look at what the nitrogen impact, phosphorus impact would be if we had to go to the groundwater discharge permit only, and what that impact would be to not only that area, but impact to like the Eel River and things like that, and in the surrounding areas. So part of this process is we have to do what we call an ENF. It's the environmental notification form, which is part of that groundwater permit. And this is what we're working with Horsley Witten on, and looking at these and graphing these when we sample the monitoring wells, and what those are going to tell us, and what impact that would be if the treatment plant had to discharge permanently to the discharge beds. Then after that, we have the fog program. So currently Kendra and I are working on a fog program and the sewer regulations. So fog is the fats, oils, and grease, and not just Plymouth, but a lot of municipalities are having trouble with grease. So the SBR, I don't know if you can see from the photo on the slide, but you get that a lot of fats and oils and grease that float on the top, and that just is impacts the treatment plant and our process. So we're going to be trying to come up with a better program with cleaning the collection system, doing monitoring at the plant. Another thing is what I talked about earlier, and I'm going to be talking about, is the Greasilla. That's going to be another possibility that to reduce the fats, oils, and grease that come into the plant. We take about an average of up to 100 gallons a day of septage. From that septage could be, which is loaded with grease, could come from restaurants, could come from homeowners, residential, commercial areas, things like that, and that's introduced into the plant. Besides the flow that we get from the towns. So this definitely impacts the treatment plant and our effluent, and we, just like a lot of other municipalities, we have to try to do our best to regulate it and get it under control. So we're working with Woodard and Curran on a program. Myself, Kendra, and I, we're going through it, not just the fog, but we even with the sewer regs to reduce that impact. And along with the sewer regs, like I said, that we're working on. I think that they were brought in front of the board a few years ago, and we're just trying to streamline those and get those up to date. And that's another thing that Kendra and I are working on, is reviewing those and bringing those up to date. The CMOM project, that ties in with the fog as well. That's we go out, we clean, jet rod, clean, power wash, if you will, all your collection systems, which is what carries wastewater to our lift stations, which ultimately pumps to the treatment plant. So we'll clean these, we CCTV those, we're monitoring also not just for grease and things like that, but also for disrepair and what we need to do, whether it be lining or spot repairs, to address these issues. Plymouth is, as we know, very old, and just like its water system, the sewer system is very old. And we do this as like a preventive maintenance. So we do this project, we see where we can line and possibly prolong, whether it be a sewer main or lateral or manhole, and we also get out there and we can inspect manholes, do those repairs, things like that. So it's a big part of a healthy collection system. And if you have a healthy collection system, you'll have a healthy plant. And when you have a healthy treatment plant, then it helps us make permit and things like that. But this is part of a requirement to the EPA. This is going to be a program that we're starting over. I believe in 2017 it was finished, I believe. And every 5 years we have to update that. And we do about 60 miles and of the sewer system. We got 1,500 manholes that we'll re-inspect and reevaluate, and hopefully we can get some of these repairs done and update some of this in town. Moving on to the SCADA system. Just like Pete, we use the SCADA system to monitor pumps and chemicals, pH, pressures. We can log on remotely to make changes, tank levels. It's important for infrastructure. We're going to be replacing a lot of outdated communications and bringing in the SCADA system, and we're working with Woodard and Curran on this project. It's very similar to the water system. We have a two-part login for security. If you want to log on remotely from home, but really it's just bringing the system updated for security and getting rid of outdated, upgrading the treatment plant and the pump stations, and just try to modify and increase the salvage security and just do a better job with monitoring and be able to make changes remotely and things like that. It's just, that's where we're at right now. What's next? So next on my presentation is Greasezilla. So this project, we're working with Woodard and Curran. So this project is going to be funded by Woodard and Curran, and we're going to be hopefully looking at revenue, not only bringing in and accepting grease with this program, but even possibly matching some of those rates with our septic receiving. Right now, we charge 6 cents per gallon for septic, and I believe it's 8 cents for sludge. I think that with the grease, with this program, we could be expecting maybe 12 to 15 cents. So we'll probably have to bring the two closer together, so one's not trying to pass grease into a cheaper revenue. So I think it's going to bring revenue because we'll be accepting grease from restaurants and things like that to help the plant and to help the community and help the collection system. It's going to be revenue for the town, and like I said, not only will it be revenue for the town by accepting grease from haulers and other companies, but it's also going to help us bring up our septic cost as well. So it's a standalone, as you can see there. It's pretty self-sufficient. The goal is to bring in grease and turn that into reusable oil, which we could possibly sell. But this is all new phase, and we're still working on that. This is early on in the phase of working with Woodard and Curran. We still have to figure out the exact revenue that this is going to be cost for the town. But it's an exciting project, and I support it. It's gonna be good, I think. That moves us on to some infrastructure. Water Street. I wasn't here the last time, obviously, but I know that there was some issues. I think that we've kind of learned from that, and we're going to move on and get that sewer main off the beach there and up into Water Street. It's about 1,300 feet of gravity sewer. We're looking at a few different options. The micro tunneling and the conventional trenching. So part of this project is bringing the main up onto Water Street and abandoning the one that's on the beach there on the intercoastal. We're in the process of this project right now, and we're expected to hopefully finish by fall of this year. And this is an exciting project. I'm kind of hoping that we lean towards the micro tunneling. I think that'd be the safest way to go, and most interesting way to go. But if we did something like that, we could be a 30-inch main, could be I think it was about 20 feet deep, which we all know that there was some water issues down there with the aquifer. So I'm hoping that this project will go smoothly, but it's exciting. It's good stuff. It's good stuff to get that off the beach there. And then the next project that we have is the flood wall around the pump station there on Water Street. They just finished up a big rehab, part of that new force main. They rehabbed this station, and this is the pump station in town. All the area pump stations flow to this one pump station, and this is what feeds the treatment plant. This is a very important building and part of the infrastructure of Plymouth. So this is going to be a very important project. Ultimately, what we're looking at doing is putting a flood barrier wall around this building. It's under design, but based on the Water Street pump station and the proximity to the harbor, with the flood zone, like I said, it's under design right now. So we're not sure what the height is actually going to be, but it's going to be what's best to protect the lift station. It's another important project that we got going on. What else? Oh, the Camelot Drive. Yeah, Camelot Drive. That's the sewer extension over there on Camelot Drive. This project will see that whole area, 30 commercial buildings, industrial properties of Camelot Drive. It's about a 1 mile of gravity sewer and some force main. This is part of the infrastructure and sewer expansion. Unlike the water department, where the town of Plymouth has a lot of water connections, the sewer department is a lot smaller. And this is part of bringing in more revenue for the town and betterment. We'll have a new pump station that will take all the flow in this area, and like I said, it will supply the new sewer service for the 30 properties that we have over here. And we're working with Wooded on this project, and we're actually reviewing design and the completion and bidding of the design is nearly complete. So this is another interesting project. We have an old lift station there geez, I lost my train of thought. On Long Pond, the old Long Pond station, that'll be removed, and we'll have a new lift station located right there on Camelot Drive. The Plymouth Airport. This treatment plant is 20 years old. I think I've seen some pretty bad treatment plants, and for the age of this treatment plant, it's seen better days. It's really outdated. It's not efficient. All the equipment is worn, and it's kind of just hung together with shoestring. But we got it operating. We got it. It's making permit. Right now we're working with Beta Engineering Group to help us renew the permit and design a new treatment plant over there for the Plymouth Airport and those 2 lift stations. There's 2 lift stations out there in the plaza. Construction, hopefully by the end of the year. And this is the last project, one of the last projects that we're working on. If you have any questions, I mean, I didn't do as well as Pete. Pete did a great job, but hopefully that was a little summary of some of the things that we got going on. Any questions you might have now or later on? If I don't know, I'll try to find out and get you the answers you need.
Any questions or comments from the board? Harry?
Doug, you did great. Don't worry about that.
Thanks, Harry.
On the airport replacement,
Yep.
and Doug, JB, I know that there were thoughts around because we would have a new station with increased capacity to possibly expand the sewer system to commercial properties on the other side of Federal Furnace Road. And I was kind of wondering, not Federal Furnace, rather. Sorry about that. I was kind of wondering, has there been any discussion on that?
I'll take that. I'll take that, Doug. Yeah, Harry. I will say, Sheila, Kendra, Doug, and I have met, and the goal is right now, as you all know, town meeting appropriated funding for the design of the wastewater treatment facility. It's in really rough shape, and we move forward, since that design, and we've secured ARPA funding for the full rehab of that facility, which all of those things are going along perfectly. Kendra has done a design for a sewer extension out to South Meadow Road. And for us to do that, we have to basically modify our comprehensive wastewater master plan, which we're going to do. Our goal was to get the treatment plant, out to bid, get that ready, get the Plymouth County funding secured, and then come back to this board and present those modifications. So basically, to answer your question, Harry, yes, we can get sewer out to South Meadow. We have put together some schematic plans in terms of how many facilities we could collect or pick up. I know, Kendra, if you want to jump in, if you're comfortable to kind of touch base in terms of what we're maybe looking at for flow, or is that too premature?
A little too premature for that. Like I said, we're dealing with a very preliminary schematic right now. I will say gravity sewer, you'll be able to, you won't quite make the side streets further up South Meadow, like Matthews Trail, you won't be able to make it up that far with gravity. So it kind of involves a more comprehensive look at it, to look at whether we'll need pumping stations and whatnot. So it's a bigger question than just how far can we extend gravity sewer in relation to that treatment plant, if that makes sense.
But we do, thank you, Kendra, but we do know we can generate additional revenue from collecting flow to offset operational costs at the airport. And that's the goal there. So we will be back at some point to discuss that issue. Okay, all right.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind, Doug did a really good job. I just want to kind of touch on it really quick to kind of wrap it up, because I think I can kind of predict some of the questions the board may have. So the airport, the sewer interceptor, the flood barrier wall, and the skater are all ARPA projects. Okay, those are all moving. All of those have been, we're under contract for design. We've learned a lot about, ARPA, CARES Act money in terms of process, working with council to make sure we follow federal procurement. So all of those things are happening now, which is good. Capital, we've already been in front of CIC. We're going in front of FinCom on February 9th, and then we'll be back in front of you guys at some point in February to talk about Greasilla, as Doug mentioned. And again, Water and County is going to be fronting all of those costs, which is great. The two projects I want to talk in particular about is the ENF for the beds. And as you all know, we have a 3 million gallon a day treatment plant. That's our design. We take about 1.5 million gallons of flow a day. The outfall, as Doug mentioned, is permanent for 1.75. We've been having conversations with the Harbor Committee, Division of Marine Fisheries, FDA. We've been through this for probably about a year now. The ENF we were hopeful that the ENF was going to be submitted to MEPA in September. It's an extremely cumbersome project. Neil Price from Horsley and Witten worked in the permitting of the original design of the plant. We're hopeful we get that in the next couple of months. That's really the first step we need to take to modify our permit. That permit needs to be adjudicated, basically. So what we want to do is utilize the beds on site for the full 3 MGD. So that's all in the works. We'll be back in front of you for that discussion as well, hopefully sooner than later. And the last one I wanted to touch base on is Camelot Drive sewer extension, as Doug mentioned. Design's almost complete. We have not applied for any outside funding on that project yet. Once we have the design and the bid and the plans ready to go, I really plan on meeting with the new manager, to have a conversation as far as how we're going to assess that neighborhood. If you remember, we did our first sewer betterment, sewer assessment. We extended sewer on Samoset. So we're very cautious as far as how we put sewer on Camelot Drive in terms of getting grant money, then trying to meet the middle of the road here in terms of, do we assess these businesses? Do we not? So basically, we're putting together a whole presentation and a plan, and we'll be back in front of you for that as well. So on the source side, there's a ton going on, all good, but we will be back in front of you for the ENF for the outfall. We'll be back in front of you for the airport, and then definitely for the Camelot Drive sewer extension. So thank you, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from board members? Any others? I just have one, JB, on the sewer plant, if you will, that we're redoing over. Was that shortened any because of the lack of maintenance and oversight, or is that just normal age? I mean, because the other one's not doing that, right? Or is it? The surprise coming?
I'm going to ask Harry, because Harry was there with us, and he saw it firsthand.
Yep.
No, I won't do
Yeah,
that.
I've been
I won't do that.
that one.
I think it's a combination of a number of things. One, it was the original design of the plant. Okay.
Okay.
When we design our, this has come up before. All of our infrastructure we take a really hard look at, long-term design and sustainability. I don't, I'm not going to look at prior administrations, everybody. I just think there were some pieces missed in terms of quality. And then absolutely, lack of maintenance. It's a recurring theme, and we're trying to do away with that.
Right.
Hopefully, now we are involved working very closely with Tom and what happens at the airport, and I don't see that changing. So, we are doing everything we can to make sure we do preventative maintenance, and we're proactive across the board for all of our infrastructure. And if you take a look at all of our stations, everything you've seen tonight in terms of the presentations on the water and sewer, you're going to hear it a second on the roads for Article 10. That's what we're doing. And now we're finally getting there with the buildings as well. So we're very pleased with all of that. Thanks.
Okay. And my last question, there's been a PFP release from the county on the woodlot. We have more room in the Camelot sewer facility if needed, wastewater treatment facility.
We do. We were just talking about that today because, we were all meeting in my office preparing for this evening, and we're talking about the design because there's going to be 2 force mains, and Kendra and Doug were explaining it to me because we want to make sure we don't repeat what happened to the wastewater treatment plant where you have an oversized force main that never takes full flow. So the wet well will be sized accordingly for future growth. You'll have 2 force mains sized accordingly for future growth. So all of those undeveloped parcels and adjacent properties will be able to flow into that Camelot Drive station.
Okay. Thank you.
You're
And any more questions for JB and the gang? Seeing none, JB, I just want to reach out to you quickly, and Charlie might want to touch on it. And thank you and the staff for all your assistance today with the county COVID test kits. I believe there was thousands of them, like 26 pallets were delivered. And I heard they called out to you, and you were a great help, you and your staff.
Yeah, we were happy to help. DPW did a great job unloading that. And then I believe we're having another shipment in a couple of weeks. So all good things, all good things. We're happy to help out however we can.
That's great. Okay.
I think Charlie wants to say something.
Muted. Yeah, he does. You're muted, Charlie. There you go.
I got a call from Matt Hanley from the county. He was actually down at Camelot. And your guys were down there with forklifts unloading 400,000 test kits. And he called Lee. Lee set it up with you, and you guys accommodated him. And he wanted to call me to thank you guys for what you did. So there's 400,000, and I guess some of the towns are going to be picking them up Thursday and Friday. And Lee, you can probably speak more. I think we can get ours right away, our test kits. So it's a great thing, and cooperation with the town of Plymouth and the county. And I love seeing that stuff. So thank you.
We already have ours.
You already have it. Yeah.
Thanks to JB, yes.
Yeah.
Mrs. Cavaco?
Yes, question. And this has nothing to do with water, just Lee, we already have ours, and how are we gonna distribute those?
I was going to talk about it a little bit at my town manager's report, but I'll mention it now. So we've got 21,150 test kits that came to us. So we're still talking about it. We talked about it on Monday. Our plan is to do a Saturday session between here at the town hall and then one in Cedarville at the emergency management, where we have one day on a Saturday where it's open to anyone in the public. We want to keep it to town residents only. We're not sure we really want to set a limit on what somebody can pick up, but if it becomes a problem, we're thinking about no more than 6 kits per person for town residents, and just do one Saturday and then make them available probably in both locations during normal business hours. And again, I think at this point, what we're talking about is just show some kind of proof that you're a town resident to receive those. And then we have a second, the ARPA shipment that you've already approved. And as soon as that comes in, we'll have another 2 pallets of these to make available also.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, again, thank you very much for your presentations.
Thank you all.
Article 10, road
Thank you.
preservation.
Thank you.
Sheila,
Thank you, everybody. Mr. Chairman, I'm going to present Article 10. So again, Article
Yes.
10, Article 10 is a capital request that's coming from DPW administration, not engineering. We sent correspondence to the board back in early January. We're in front of Finance Committee where we received unanimous support last week. And as I'm sure you all know, and just to recap, this has been a consistent approach we've had since 2012. And what this does is this is a $5 million capital request. And this really supplements your Chapter 90. So your Chapter 90 allotment, your apportionment is about $1.45 million. And as we know, that money is not enough to basically maintain or improve your road network, your road rating network. So years ago, we put together a whole road program, and that road program covers your accepted streets, your unaccepted streets, and even your sidewalks. Town meeting, received special legislation where we could spend public monies on private ways. So this whole concept really comes together nicely where it's a 70-30 split, which is really the same makeup or distribution of your road network, in terms of accepted, non-accepted. So that represents a $3.5 million contribution towards your accepted roads and a $1.5 million contribution towards your unaccepted roads. And that's in addition to the 1.5. And that's been able to really allow DPW to really, put forward a great road program in terms of how many road miles we do in a year, in terms of paving, how we're able to maintain and reconstruct roads. If as you know, we did Beaver Dam and Long Pond this year, some really, outdated road projects that we've been waiting to do. And, over the past couple of years, we were in front of you guys, I think in the spring, to kind of really highlight our road program. We've been able to really upgrade your roads. And, we have a low 70 in terms of a rating now, which is pretty good. And, we've come a long way. And, we're looking for your support in that front. And I will tell you that after the Finance Committee, the question was raised about the stabilization fund. As you know, your finance director came up with a very creative approach to fund the program where she uses excise tax. So those funds really cover your principal and interest for these borrows. And, it's a very nice program and we can't say enough, good things about it. And, Sheila and I are happy to answer any questions. So thank you.
any questions for JB? Guess not. Okay.
Everybody have a great night. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, JB.
You're welcome.
So you're gonna,
Presenting Article 13?
so Rich, Dickie, do you want to do a motion to support that?
Absolutely.
I'll make the
We
motion.
have a motion.
Make the motion.
Second.
Have a second? All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Hi, Lee.
Thank you. So
Lee with an A.
change my hat too.
Hello.
I'm putting on my planning director's hat now. So if I could, this is the town's annual appropriation for the promotion fund. In 1992, we had a special act that requires 45% of the hotel motel tax to be set aside. We're one of the few towns in the Commonwealth that actually has the foresight to put money aside to promote Plymouth as a tourism destination. So this year we've seen quite a bump up from last year due to COVID. Last year was a little lower. We have 117% increase in revenue compared to what we had last year. So a big jump, and it's actually also the most we've ever received in any given year to date, even greater than 2019. So as I said, 45% of that, which is $1,109,928, will go into the promotion fund. And that money is used to support the visitor center and the advertising that Lee Filson does through See Plymouth. And then it's also used to support many of the various events that go on in the community, and also our matching funds to distinguished visitors of fund. So the memo you have just gives a little overview of some of the things that were supported last year. And I would also just point out just a couple things. One is we keep talking about what impact did the short-term rentals have on this. Surprisingly, it's only about 4.5% of the proceeds. So still the vast majority of this money is coming from the hotels and motels in the community. We do see an increase from the short-term rentals, but it's not as significant as I would have guessed. And then finally, as we look at this additional money that's in the account, the biggest pressure we see on some of these events is how we deal with a post 9/11 and some of the terrorism activities we've seen in other communities over the years. So more and more, the need for funding to make our events safe becomes a bigger and bigger pressure. So I think this money is going to be great to be used through Lee Folsom for additional advertising for the town, and also to hopefully support some of those initiatives we need to make sure any of the events that are happening in Plymouth are safe. And then the final thing I want to point out, whether it's for Lee's group or if it's for all the other events that we support, the money we provide is leveraged by about 75–80% funds from other groups. So this just represents a small amount of what's invested in the community for tourism. And so when we look at this money, it really is a great way and a great example to show how we can take a chunk of change and really match it by about 75% from state, private businesses, other groups, donations that are used to support tourism in the community. So I think with that, that's it. I don't know if Lee has anything she would like to add.
No, I'm certainly willing to answer questions. I do know that all of the research that we've done in helping us to buy advertising, I think probably contributes to the numbers growing higher, because when you can look at actual science before you make those decisions about who to advertise to, how to advertise, what to advertise, et cetera, it really does help you to bring more and more visitation and raise those tax revenues.
Any questions from the board? If not, I await a motion.
The
Yeah,
motion to
I
support.
just have one request, Lee.
Mhm.
If you grew up, I know you do great work, obviously, you know, I know you very well, and you do great work, and you're very important to the businesses in town. I just have one request, if you could work closely with the PGDC on all your events. You guys are in the same building, and I hope that you can just work together closely when you're doing events. That's just a request I have, if you can do that. And I know you do now, so,
Mhm.
but I don't, you know, they have the best interests in Plymouth, and, you know, they work hard for Plymouth, just like your group does. So that's why I love having you in the same building. So that's all. That's my request. And I'll make a motion.
Did Patrick make one before you?
No,
my
that's
computer's
okay. You
going
can,
Right.
you know,
Okay.
Yeah,
So give me a motion, somebody.
I just did.
Okay, do I have a second?
Support, yep.
I'll second the motion to support Article 13 at town meeting.
Discussion. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you, Lee.
Thank
Thank
you.
you so much, and
And
thanks
Lee
for
with
your
an
time.
A, thank you. Article 17, sign zoning. Is that you, Julie,
Yes, sir.
with an E?
With an
Okay.
E, with two E's and two N's. So our sign bylaw was created almost 40 years ago, 1970s. It's largely very much the way it was when it was created in the 1970s. And full disclosure, this is the most confusing part of the zoning bylaw. I've worked with it for over 34 years and I don't understand it. I have always deferred to the building department. They don't understand it. It's a very complicated bylaw we have today. Also, as you recall, last year, we had some issues with the free speech, political signs, non-commercial signs. So we had indicated that we would be looking at this bylaw to address some of those free speech issues. So we've worked with the building department, my department, and then town council to revise the bylaw. We have also worked with Attorney Cirque, who has offered to give us some input as somebody who has worked with the bylaw for years. Zebra signs and Brenner signs. We reached out to all of those. And we also had asked for any comments that we might have had from the Historic District Commission. So we went through and talked to a lot of different people about the bylaw and suggestions. What we've done is eliminated any of the issues related to being content neutral for free speech. We have updated the content. We have reduced the number of tables from 5 to 1, the number of pages from 12 to 6. So not only have we addressed some of those free speech issues, we've really simplified this bylaw. Just point out that when it's a non-commercial sign, where we really can't regulate what content is in that sign, but we can certainly still regulate where a sign is placed. So if a political sign is placed on town property, we have the right to remove it. If a political sign is on private property and it's obstructing whether it's pedestrians or vehicle view, we still have the rights to remove that too. And the other thing I would point out, the other change we've done is we had a bylaw that pretty much prohibited highway billboard signs. So we've actually now just made it clear that those signs are prohibited and not allowed. All the requirements for size, lighting, quantities, they all remain the same as they were. And so I would say in the end, I do not expect to see any difference with the way we do the bylaw. We've done this in such a way to maintain the way we regulate signs in the town of Plymouth for commercial signs. And again, we know that we have limited control of what we can do for non-commercial signs. So again, I think in the end, once this is adopted, we'll actually have a bylaw for the first time in my career that I can understand and give advice on. And then secondly, once this is done, I do not anticipate seeing any change in the way signs are regulated in the town or the types of commercial signs you see in the town of Plymouth. So with that, I would look for your support. It has been supported by the Advisory and Finance Committee and by the Planning Board. Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. Any questions for Lee? Seeing none, do you have a motion?
Motion.
Second.
Second, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ice skate and rink food truck. I believe Mrs. Cavaco.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And this discussion isn't necessarily to have food trucks, but more the option to have, whether it's a nonprofit, a Girl Scout, Boy Scout, someone with a little hot chocolate stand, maybe a local business, but our bylaws are fairly strict as what we can allow in those areas. So I just wanted to see if there's something that we could do, you know, temporarily for the season when the rink is up and running, for some type of little, whether it's one of those things to have like a little hot chocolate coffee stand.
So if I could, we've talked a little bit at the staff level on this and just a few things. So if we wanted to select a vendor, that's a bidding process and that would take time. So we can't simply just select one vendor. We did talk about it and there were two options for something for this season that could happen. One would be to simply just say if somebody wants to do something there, they can go without limiting I think this time of year, you're not going to see a lot of people. Most of those food trucks and vendors are not operating in the wintertime. So one option would be wait and bid it for the next season. One option would be to just simply say, hey, if you want to have your food truck down there, here you would set the hours of operation, but here's, go on down and do it. The third option would be, and we've done this before, where if there's a nonprofit who wants to come forward and do a special event, so that special event would be Friday, I'm making it up, but Thursday, Friday, and Saturday nights at the skating rink. So if that nonprofit came forward seeking a special event, then this board would have the ability to grant a exclusive license to that nonprofit, and then that nonprofit would pick the vendor to do it. So just some options to consider if the board wants to go ahead with this. Thank you.
Comments from the board or questions? Charlie?
I'm all for a nonprofit, all for that, or even a local business, all for that too. Again, we have a bylaw that doesn't allow food trucks on public property. And it's a great bylaw because, I've seen it. I've seen hot dog stands, sausage cats try to set up in the waterfront area, and it didn't work. We actually chased them away and years ago, and it's not fair to the restaurants, okay, that are there 12 months of the year serving the people and struggle in certain months. It's not fair because what'll happen is in June, July, August, all the busy months, it'll open up the doors for these food trucks. And I get nothing against food trucks, are great, but they're great to do private events on private property. There's plenty of catering events out there for the food trucks. So that's my feeling. A nonprofit local business, I'm all for it.
Mrs. Gavaco?
Yeah, just so you know, Charlie, that we have allowed food trucks, and like I said, it's not a food truck thing for me, it's just somebody to be there. But we have allowed food trucks on Nelson Park and other areas for for whatever event or for a weekend, or like Nelson Park has food trucks all summer long. So
Because
one of the things
they bid, but they bid on that spot. It's because the vendor that was there didn't want to renew his agreement. And I know you have them on the festival, but they pay the town up. They pay the festival, the Chamber of Commerce for that. We've allowed that. I know that, and I'm not crazy about that, to be honest with you. I know it makes the festival, but all those businesses right around there, I think they suffer a little bit from that. They probably do some business from the people walking around, but I'm just telling you my feeling on that. I just don't want to see push carts and vendors out on the street. And so that's why I'm always very careful when I hear food trucks.
So
Mrs.
this is
Gavaco?
very specific to the skating rink. It's not other places. And I'll guarantee you there will be no ice skating in the summer months. So,
No, it's a precedent. You had it there. Why can't we go here? I'm just telling you how I feel. So,
I understand. And like I said, it's not a food truck thing for me. It's just being able to have, if somebody wants to go there, to have the ability to do that.
and this
That's
is my
all.
restaurant background. I'm protecting the restaurants. I'll be very clear about that. So if somebody want to call me pro-business, I'm protecting the restaurants when I say this. So, yep. Thank you.
Helm?
Having actually gone up there during a very busy day, I can see the value in some sort of concession there, whether it's a charitable organization that's going to serve hot chocolate, coffee, and tea, or something else. I see the value for the residents. And I also, knowing the area very well, this is not really going, serving, snacks, hot chocolate, tea, I don't think is really going to impact the restaurants or the businesses around there. It's fairly isolated to a certain extent. People are not going to be walking up State Road to Manomet Center from there. And I do kind of see the value in something. I'm not exactly sure what.
Harry, you're missing my point. My point is you're going to set a precedent if you allow food trucks to go up there. You're missing my whole point on it. Okay.
Well, one thing about food trucks, if you've been there, Charlie, when it's busy, I'm not really sure food trucks are the answer. There's good amount of parking, but it was totally parked up. Some people were double parked. I'm not really sure, unless they're parking on the grass, that food trucks, that's why I said I'm not sure what the answer is. And I understand about precedent, but Lee mentioned a way that this could happen
I'm all for that.
through a special license. But Charlie, I mean, in reality, okay, you see the variation of weather that is going on, and the reality is that nobody can predict if there's going to be able to be skating on any weekend or any Friday night or any day. I'm fairly familiar with the restaurant business, and particularly in this time with getting employees very difficult. I'm not sure how a restaurant would actually, or an operator of a food truck would actually be able to do this, because you would have to schedule without knowing what the weather is going to be. And then if the weather doesn't cooperate, you would likely have to pay the people who were manning it anyway, and there would have been supplies that would have been bought. So I think that honestly, food trucks themselves as a concept aren't really an option for this. I'm kind of thinking that Lee's plan, and Betty just raised her hand, she'll weigh in on that, on this, are the way to go.
And I said I would support them, but not food trucks. I would support nonprofits and local business.
Mrs. Kabako.
Yes, so the whole point of it is, I mean, we don't know who's gonna come in front of us to say, they want it. Or if there's anybody, I'm just saying the option of having the availability for people to do it is kind of what we're looking for. Because if it's someone that's going to come in front of us, then, or in front of the town manager, then that has to be approved. So it's the ability to do something.
Dickie, and again, my recommendation would be if you find somebody to have them as a nonprofit to file. And Charlie, I meant that could be a nonprofit looking to have a food truck as well, but we certainly understand your concern, or a nonprofit looking to do some other form. And same thing for Harry. I think if they came in and said we want a food truck, we have to talk to police, fire, and DPW to see if that's even a safe thing to do. And that might come back as no. If the nonprofit said, hey, we want to do a coffee stand or whatever it is, we would look at whatever that proposal is and make sure that all the departments would sign off on it, and then say, yes, you can do that as a special event for whatever time.
Mr. Bletta.
I agree with you, Lee, but just keep in mind, Plymouth is a tourist town, okay? Everybody wants to be here in the summer. Okay, everybody, including push carts, sausage carts, vendors. Believe me, if we set a precedent, it's not fair to all the merchants, the merchants as well as the restaurants. because you would open up the door for people selling merchandise too. So I want to be very careful. I think it's a great bylaw that we have that prevents vending on the streets, on our public streets. So that's all I want to say about it. So thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So Lee, just so I understand it, I'm sorry, Patrick, did you want to go? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, I'm on board with, if anyone wants to come forward and set that up, all the power to them. To set up a nonprofit, to get volunteers, I mean, I know to sell water at the Waterfront Festival through the Rotary Club, it's not like this just comes together. I bet it's doubtful that there's gonna be a group that wants to do this, but I think if they want to, we should not raise a ton of barriers. If it's this type of thing, let's just let them do it. I think it'd be an excellent thing to have the coffee, the concessions there. And I don't see the slippery slope argument of that transforming the downtown waterfront as a concern that I have. I think this is an isolated thing that we have the power to give approval for. And I don't see this as being a precedent that would affect anywhere else.
So the precedent you were talking about, just so I'm clear, is the one that would come before the board to get the dates approved? Is that what you're saying? Like Lee had mentioned, that's what I was gonna ask Lee.
Yeah.
Was that-
Just come
So
forward
what,
and-
could you do this? Let's just a scenario, Lee. If just say there isn't a group, some individual in town puts in an application for Friday and Saturday for the month of, say, February. And we could put it on and vote it as a month. Now, if they don't show up, well,
So it would be kind of two options.
okay.
But I think normally you do not see the special events. We just do that internally. So
Okay,
what I would suggest is if it's a special event and it's the Kiwanis or it's the Rotary or some other nonprofit, local nonprofit that's looking to do something other than a food truck, we would just handle that through our internal process and just allow it. I would say based on this conversation, if the Kiwanis comes in and says, we've got a sponsor of a food truck and we'd like to do it, I'd bring that back to you and see what you'd want to do on that.
I would be all for that, all for Kiwanis, some nonprofit, as volunteers, they're selling things, going to a charity. No problem with that. So,
I don't think that it was, he was asking though.
who's
He was
last?
saying if the Kiwanis came and applied for the license for the ice skating rink. That's what or am I wrong? I don't know.
So if at the ice skating rink, we'll
Right.
use the Kiwanis, they came in and said, look, we normally will put up a tent and we'll sell the things you've seen us sell at the waterfront. We'd like to do that. We'll run that by police, fire, DPW, parks, and if they all sign off on it, we would allow them to do that for whatever times they had picked for the nights or days they've picked. What I'm saying is if the Kiwanis said, hey, we talked to this food truck that wants to do hot dogs, that I would bring back. It has to be a nonprofit. It can't be just anyone. And so if the nonprofit said, we want to do a food truck, that I would bring back to you and have you discuss that piece. But if it was just like what you typically see for the Rotary or Kiwanis Club, we would just handle that internally.
Boy, this is a lot of effort for a little hot chocolate, let me tell you.
I love
It
hot
is.
chocolate.
I think it's a great idea for a nonprofit to raise some money, I really do.
Do we need,
Harry?
do we need to motion something to?
I don't believe so. I think we have a process that already works and we'll do that. And I've got, I think, a consensus from this board that if it includes a food truck, it comes back to this board.
Okay.
Now, if a food truck just happens to show up there on a Saturday and we don't control it, there's only so much I can do about that. But again, if they go through the process, we'll bring it back to you.
If that happens, Lee, I'll call you.
Okay.
All right,
Yes.
town managers report.
I just have a few things. In addition, as we talked about earlier, the test kits that are coming in, and I think that's great. We'll have thousands of those available for the community. I'll report back to you once we finalize the date, but to distribute that, I think we want to do it sooner than later. At this point, we were waiting to see because the initial comment we had was that we were getting 235 cartons. So we weren't really clear what a carton is. But now that we know we have 21,000 test kits, we're going to move ahead, pick a Saturday. We'll report back to you on that. A couple of other things. I have worked with some people in the community. We've gone out and talked about the Conservation Commission regulations. I have selected the BSC group to be the consultant to do the peer review, and we're in the process of engaging them. They have a Boston attorney on board also to provide a legal review also. So again, I worked with some of the concerned citizens. The scope came from them, not from the Conservation Commission or me. And so we have a scope. We have selected the BFC group, and we'll be moving forward with that peer review and certainly report back to you as that progresses. Just a comment about what goes on in the procurement office. They've done some incredible work. They've had the highest volume they've ever done in that office. 52 bids in 2021, 68 contracts, 4,500 POs. And it's a 40% increase in what they've produced in that office compared to last year. So really just incredible. And then the final thing I have is that the fire department, Ed Bradley, was able to receive a grant for $26,128.77 for safety equipment for the department. So that's for personal protective equipment for turnout gear for the firefighters. So another great grant that we received through the hard work of Ed Bradley and his staff. And that's what I have for today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. Any questions for the acting town manager, Mr. Hartman? Seeing none. Chris, is there anyone wishing to speak on the public comment?
Not that I know of, but it's a good time to mention, if you do want to speak, just click the raise your hand icon at the bottom of your screen and I will let you in. And we do have someone, Irene Caldwell.
Okay,
Again, all set.
thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name is Irene Caldwell, and I've lived in Plymouth for 16 years. And for the last 70 years, I've been one of those activists that have lobbied against nuclear power plants coming into a community because no one has ever figured out what to do with the disposal of the water from a retired nuclear power plant. So next Monday, January 31st, our community is going to discuss and put up a little fight about whether we want to accept 1 million gallons of nuclear radioactive waste into the water supply. I cannot believe that there is not one sign in Plymouth, not one sign on the banners of the highways, not one sign protesting the fact that we are even considering putting radioactive waste into Plymouth Bay. All of the things that you have talked about today, taking care of this item or that item, has nothing. If we cannot use our bay to swim, to catch fish, to play in the sand, because of the compounded effects, not only of our power plant, but all the power plants that are destroying our bodies of water. All of the problems that you have encountered with the sewer plants and the water plants, can you imagine 100 years from now when they are dealing with the combined effects of all of the nuclear power plants dumping their radioactive waste into the water? Now, I'm tired, you're tired, our whole community is tired from the pandemic. They're tired from political fighting. They're tired from every single thing that we have had to deal with in the last 70 years that I've been alive. But for there to be silence from the whole community about whether or not that we would even consider dumping radioactive waste into the waterways is frightening. And I'm not talking about all the great people who are out there fighting. Downwinders, Pine du Bois, all the whole nuclear power community that has been fighting. That's not who I'm talking about. I'm talking about the average Dick and Harry in the community who doesn't even know we are considering allowing that radioactive waste to go into the water. What I have an idea that I think would stop it. It was an idea that we used when I lived in California. The people in California wanted to save some land, so they got out there, and from all the hills and valleys, people went and marched up and down and saved the last little bit of land on the California Bay. When I lived in the Hudson Valley, they wanted to erect a landfill or a municipal solid waste incinerator, and all of the people in the Hudson Valley band together and protected each other's communities so that we would not have a negative impact. But where is the world? Where is the United States communities that produce nuclear waste? Why are we not all protesting and being upset? It's because our minds and our hearts are tired of fighting. We are tired of losing the battle over and over and over again. And now, on the eve of deciding whether Holtec will go through with a right that they have been given a right to dispose of radioactive waste by the NRC. What is going to stop them? You're not going to stop them. I'm not going to stop them. Only a massive public outcry from all the communities that produce radioactive waste will stop them. Maybe that even won't stop them. When we have to deal with Fukushima and the accident that inadvertently happened and their water went into the bays around Japan, or when a nuclear power plant is built on an earthquake fault, and it's okay, and then we have to deal with that waste. And we have to deal with waste out in Washington that's just happened to deal with a link. Does it mean we don't care anymore? Does it mean that there is so much waste going into our waters that when Holtec asked to dispose of 1 million gallons of water, there's no public outcry? I understand that the environmentalists, the people I associate with, are protesting, but besides us, who is out there jumping up and down and screaming? Anyway, I know you're tired. I'm tired. I'll answer any questions that you have. I wish you had the power to call up all the media stations in Massachusetts, in the United States, and in the world, and to say, for the next 6 days at 5 o'clock in the afternoon or 6 o'clock or whatever time you say, how much radioactive waste can go into our water? How much will you tolerate? How much will you allow those little microscopic cells that float up and down in the water column? How much are they allowed to receive? How much do the stripers get? How much do the seals get? How much do those nice beds in Duxbury, how much are they allowed to get? When does it become a problem? Does it become a problem when 1/10 of your great-grandchildren have abnormal limbs? We'll never be able to prove that it came from the dumping of the waste. But each of you right now have discussed all of these political issues and economic issues and tourist issues about Plymouth. I wish that you could shake every media station and ask them to say at the same time, people of Massachusetts, how much radioactive waste will you allow to come in? And then when the kids go down to White Horse Beach and they're playing in that sand that maybe is contaminated and maybe it isn't, but we're not allowed to talk about it. We're not allowed to talk about it because we don't want to scare the people of Plymouth. Well, guys, you have to scare us. Whatever it does, please think of a way to stir the pot and stop the spread.
Mrs. Caldwell, thank you very much. And I can assure you that we've had these discussions. I just can't discuss everything here right now, but that is going to be part of our plan. So I tell you to stay tuned, and we will need your help, and we'll need everybody's help, and we do want to involve other communities. So just to let you know, we're on the same page with you at the moment.
Thank you.
All right, and I'm saying it publicly, and I see Harry's head going up and down. So we're looking right into this now as you sit there.
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
You're
Thank
quite
you.
welcome. You have a nice night. Okay.
Thanks. Good night.
Yeah. Good night.
Thanks, Irene.
Thank you.
Yep. Anyone else wishing to speak on a public comment? Chris?
Not that I see.
Okay, I'm gonna move on to the licenses and administrative notes. We have Spectacle Management is a one-day wine and malt license for a concert on February 9th, 2022 from 7 and 11 p.m. at Memorial Hall.
Move it.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. MAP Promotions is a one-day wine and malt license for February 5th from 5 p.m. to 12 a.m. also at Memorial Hall. Second? Discussion?
Dickie, it's 12 p.m., not 12 a.m., 12 p.m.
Oh, okay, because that's what it says here. I'm sorry.
No, mine says
Okay.
5 to 12.
Thank you. No problem. Okay, good catch. Just reading off the paper.
It is,
All those in favor?
That would be 12 a.m.
it's 12 a.m.
That would be midnight.
Right.
Yeah.
I think Dickie said 2. Doesn't matter. 12.
Oh, 5 p.m. to 12 a.m.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that
Dick-
is the right
Dick-
hour, right?
Dick will be
Okay.
there
All
from
right.
9 to 2.
I won't be there, but anyway. Discussion other than that? All in favor? Unanimous. And we have one more, comprehensive entertainment liquor. Franciscanos of Plymouth doing business as Arco Cafe and Tacos and Tequila. Colony Place, Anna Michael, manager, holder of annual alcohol restaurant license, is requesting the following license: comprehensive entertainment, group one, radio and TV.
Move. Motion.
What's the name of the place, Dick? I don't have that on my,
It's the Ocho Cafe.
oh, yeah.
Yep,
Yep, all in favor.
discussion? Charlie?
Yes.
No,
No, I'm in favor.
you're good, okay.
It's late.
Motion.
Been a
My
long
computer's going in and out, so it might not.
Is he a
sound right.
restaurant or a food cart?
Discussion now, if you can hear me. All those in favor? Unanimous. Thank you. Any questions on the administrative notes? Is true?
Move as a
Motion,
group. Move as a group.
okay.
Second.
Second, discussion? All those in favor? Unanimous. Committee liaison? Designee updates? Old business? letters? New business? Wow, motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Thank you for watching, everyone. Have a good week. We'll see you next week.